they've got the name tag, so I don't know if I need to introduce them. So let's start with the first question, and each one of the members has a question from, but I will read it so the audience knows what the question is. This is for the Senate and House of Representative questions. As a representative from rural Minnesota, how are you going to ensure that the needs of greater Minnesota are addressed in the legislature? And Jason, you pick number one so you can answer this question.
Thank you. The way that I approached this for my first 2 years was to get out into the community, getting to local events, getting to school board meetings, township meetings, county board meetings, and listening to what the needs were on those levels, finding out how I could help at the state level, and then bringing that down to St. Paul, whether to staff to help me figure out if it was something we could take care of just without any need of legislation, or if there was something that we could do on the state side to bring forward legislation to help them out with their problems. You know, that's how you're going to find out what the real needs are in rural Minnesota, is talking to the people here. So I will continue to do that. Made it to about 75% of the board meetings so far, and hoping to get to all the rest. And I know many others are doing the same, and I think that's the best way to do what's needed.
Thank you, Jason. Michael, you have the next draw. Would you like me to reread the question?
It's right here.
All right.
Well, I'm a businessman. I own 3 businesses myself. I am a general contractor, I'm a remodeler, I'm a real estate broker, I own a retreat center, and I work with a couple of nonprofits. You know, so I mean, I know the things that I need, and to be successful. One is I need a longer day, but the other things that that there's so many. There's the frustrations I get into. I do a lot of work down in the cities because there's the amount of work that's in East Central Minnesota. There's just not as much of it as there is down in the cities. So I'm down in the cities a lot, and the biggest problem that I have when I'm down there is rules and regulations. I just get hammered every time I turn around. There's an inspector looking over my shoulder. There's somebody that's walking in and stuff like that. Now, inspections are good, okay, but some of the inspections are so ridiculous. Like, I have to do a waterproofing inspection on a basement that's a slab on grade. What waterproofing do I need to do on a foundation below grade? It's ridiculous. So we need to look at some of the rules, regulations, things like that are going to help businesses not have to sit there and jump through hoops, get held up on projects, and be able to move ahead in a timely manner, so that way they can move on to the next project.
Thank you, Michael. Same question, Tom Jones, you're next.
Well, thank you. And I'll tell you, after driving around and going to doors for a couple of 3 months, you realize that every possible position has a constituency. And I think the biggest thing to do to help to ensure that this district has a voice down in St. Paul is to try to create a place where all of those views kind of have a residency, a place where you can talk to the people and say, I understand your position, and I think that what we need to do is come to a common ground, because if you're too far left, too far right, you're going to get caught where absolutely nothing gets done. And I think that's the position we've been in a couple of years. So really what we need to do is find that common ground so that all the voices are heard and we can find a place for compromise. And Greater Minnesota is that place of diversity. And so, here it is. Let's go down and find the common ground and do the work that needs to be done so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Tony, you're next.
So, this was a good set of answers. First, I'd like to thank the Chamber and Tech and Window for hosting this event, and for everybody for showing up. This is kind of a tradition in our election season, and one that I really look forward to. As far as being a representative from rural Minnesota, this is one of the things I tell people quite frequently. I learned about politics and governing, serving for 9 years on a township board. really hard work, really rewarding in a very, very small sense. Grassroots government at its best. 36 square miles, 6 by 6. Take care of 11 miles of road. Very small agricultural community, and that's where I grew up and where I learned, cut my eye teeth in trying to craft policies that can work for everyone. And one of the things that I learned, and being out on the campaign, and particularly in this a little bit crazy campaign season, one of the things that sometimes is talked about in greater Minnesota is we need to go down there and fight. We need to go down there and fight for what we need. And I always say, well, I mean, you can choose that route if you want, but the fact of the matter is, the population center is gaining more and more in terms of our representation, and we're losing population, and we lose representation in St. Paul. If we go down there to fight, we lose that fight, and that's not a good thing for any of us. If we go down there with our best attitude and understand that we all do better when we all do better, and that we are one Minnesota and we sink or swim together, we can really win these arguments on their merits. We have real disparities in the funding for our education system. I was talking with the new superintendent at Pine City here just last week about that. We have some real disparities in how our tax base supports the critical functions that we do. And we can work on these things. So local government aid is really a big solution for that. We have very unique transportation needs, but where most of the representation comes from the metro area is not going to understand those needs, and they're not going to be receptive to somebody who comes down there to fight them. They're going to be receptive to somebody who comes down and is able to articulate in a clear and concise manner the needs of greater Minnesota and work toward those needs on their merits.
Thank you, Tony. Let me clarify on the questions. The questions, we are in need of questions. I have one more starter question that I will ask the candidates. When you have your questions, if you need a pen and paper, please raise your hand. We'll be sure you get some so you can write your questions. Make sure there are questions for each candidate. We can't have one for one or two candidates. We can have questions that they can all answer. So with that said, we've got one more starter question. I do need some more questions, so if you guys get some time to write out your questions to the candidates, that'd be great. Hold up your hand. I'll make sure the runners see your questions. Okay, Michael, you're next. On the starter question number 2, what are your plans, this is for all candidates, what are your plans to address economic development, job creation, and business creation and retention in rural Minnesota?
Well, one of the things that is important to my job in doing bids and working on projects is high-speed internet. I mean, I get calls from CenturyLink all the time. Hey, boost up to 20 megabytes of for an extra $10. I barely get 1.5 megabytes of data. We need to get broadband up here. We need to get better broadband up here. The other thing that that is important is transportation. We need to get we're working on 35W, which is great, and stuff like that. But the problem is in the Twin Cities area, all they keep talking about is light rail. How does light rail impact Pine County? How does the Southwest light rail? I mean, we need those roads up here. We need that funding up here to do the things that we need to do in Pine County. And when we go down there, that's the thing that we need to do is continually push our agenda forward. I mean, my goal is as a senator down there is to work for Senate District 11. Okay, that's my priority. It affects me. It affects you. It affects our businesses. I'm tired of going down Main Street and seeing empty stores. I'm tired of going down Main Street and seeing empty houses. I'm tired of going down, all these little towns and they're just empty. We need to get that business up here and give businesses a reason to come up here. And that's what we need to be doing. We need to give them a reason to be coming up to rural Minnesota. Better labor, because we're committed. Better lifestyle. Services are less expensive. unless you're hooked up to East Central Electric, but that's a different thing altogether. So, but the key is we just need to get people to be coming up out of the cities, you know, and focused on East Central Minnesota. We're the same distance to Duluth as we are to the Twin Cities. We're an easy hub for western Wisconsin. We're an easy hub for central Minnesota, north and south. Pine City and Pine County is a great resource for the people of Minnesota.
Thank you, Michael. Tom Jones, you're next.
They told me I didn't turn the mic on last time, I got it this time. All right, so, you know, job creation and job retention are always going to be the kinds of things that that rural districts are going to fight for. For 23 years, I've been living out in rural Kanabec County, and it was the first thing I heard about. It was talked about when I was a director with the chamber, and as a small businessman and a building contractor, you always want to make sure that the people that you're building for can afford the projects that they're doing. And you know, Mike's right. Broadband is probably one of the biggest things we could do, because not only does it help small business have the same, you know, digital storefront that someone does in Mankato, Duluth, Moorhead, or wherever, but it also helps schools, and that draws people in to stay, and it also helps small businesses. And I think that we really need to make sure that with LGA and the Minnesota Investment Fund and tax-based equalization kind of projects that allow us to put our resources into business development and job creation, so that we don't have to constantly fight that rearguard action of having to just fill potholes and grade roads, but you know, really make this place with its schools and its hospitals look like the kind of place that is going to attract and keep good paying jobs.
Thank you. Sorry, I was watching that. We do need more questions. I see some are coming in, so be sure if you anybody need pen and paper? Okay, just be sure you get your questions in so we can keep going. Tony Lourey, you're the next one, please.
All right, well, thank you. You know, there's both short, you know, more immediate actions that we can take, and then longer term investments to ensure economic vitality into the future. Some of the more immediate ones, I mean, honestly, we need to get that tax bill that we had last year across the desk again and passed by the governor. That had so many phenomenal rural initiatives that I worked hard on, and I'm really proud of what that structure was. I do need to say I agree with Governor Dayton that he did need to veto that tax bill because of a $100 million mistake that was discovered after we had adjourned. But I wish that we could have come back and fixed it, and if we can't get back into a special, I think we should address that right off. Some of the ones that are most important to rural is the statewide commercial industrial exemption of the first $100,000 of every business across the state of Minnesota. That is a very, very rural initiative, so that most of our businesses would be almost entirely exempt from the statewide commercial industrial tax that has been a real problem for our businesses. Working family tax credit expansion. That is a very, very rural focused program, and there was a significant expansion in the working family tax credit, significant student loan credits in the tax bill, school building bond, 40% agricultural credit to reduce the burden on agricultural lands for schools that are going out to bond for building referendums. Currently on operating referendums, it's house garage 1 acre, but on building referendums, it's the entirety of the agricultural property, and that has made it a real challenge for farmers and for schools, keeping up on the facilities maintenance that's needed. And then one that actually started here in Pine County, out-of-home placement costs for Indian Child Welfare Act kids was also included in that tax bill, a really great provision. We had a lot of people from Pine County come down and testify. I carried that bill and was really glad to get that built into the tax bill. Then the longer term investments have to be along the lines of education and partnerships with entities like Pine Tech here. The business incubator right over here is really one of the best types of investments in trying to attract and retain qualified businesses and quality businesses, fostering community dialogues like GPS 4593. I don't know if how many are familiar with that, but that's a regional dialogue that goes on with the school, the Pine Tech, the high schools, the businesses, and the cities and the counties across this region, trying to collaboratively build the case for our region. Things like that are really key priorities to building and sustaining over time Minnesota rural economy.
Thank you, Tony. Jason, you have a question next?
All right, going forth is pretty tough, but everything on my notes here has already been talked about, so. Senator Lourey always seems to do that to me. So, broadband especially is something that I know we're working on, and we're going to see some federal money coming in that's really going to help, for our schools especially, and for business. This is going to be really important. Another thing touched on by Mike, we need to be able to have government get out of the way a little bit, let our businesses thrive. They know how to run their business. We need to be able to let them do that. The property tax relief for businesses was going to be huge. We absolutely have to get that one through in this next bill. When you look at $100,000 of your property tax, a lot of your businesses in the metro area, that's going to be a fairly small amount, but in our rural areas, that's huge. That's for most people going to be over 50% of their property value. So if we can get that through, that'll be great. And then the one that's kind of near and dear to my heart, as a construction person myself, I am working with the building trades folks to promote construction industries to our students in high schools. Our rural area really, many people come from our schools and go into the trades, but we're losing that. And these are jobs that are in great need right now. And so I was really happy to work with the building trades to get some grant money put in place so that construction businesses can get into our schools and talk to kids and let them be aware of the opportunities in the construction markets, and then get to schools like Pine Tech and other service-oriented schools. Those are the types of jobs that are going to really sustain rural Minnesota. And they may not always be right here, but we can see we have several people in our communities that drive into the metro area or up to Duluth to do those jobs, but they bring that income back here and put their kids in our schools and things like that. So that's one of the things I will really continue to work on.
Thank you, Jason. All right, we're going to start with questions from our audience. And let's see. Tom Jones, you will be the first one to get to answer this question. What is your attitude towards the proposed Northern Lights Express, the NLX, rail project? I'll read it one more time. What is your attitude towards the proposed Northern Lights Express rail project?
Well, unlike some legislators, I believe that mass transit is the future. We're going to have to find. It may take 30 years to organize ourselves around mass transit. In the metro, they've got the two lines and they're both working above projections. The third line, southwest, could have been given the go-ahead if the legislature had allowed Hennepin County to fund that $137 million, take it off the state docket. And so whenever you're going to do mass transit, you're going to have to be ahead of the game so that you don't, A, put stuff in the way that you can't move, and B, allow your people to start organizing themselves around the kinds of mass transit, because we all know that in the last 20 years, a trip down to the cities you used to be able to predict when rush hour was coming, and but now rush hour is 24/7, and you get out there on the road and you go, where are these people going, and How come they're not somewhere, you know, doing some work? But, so, mass transit is something that is going to have to, we can't keep building roads over prime farmland. We've got to find a way to get, and you know, if the North Star is a stretch right now, 20 years from now, it may not be a stretch. And we'll certainly wish, you know, I mean, oil isn't going to be $40 a barrel forever. It's been 100, and it could be and will be again, and we don't know exactly what that's going to mean for us. So let's get. I was really upset when they tore up the rail between, basically between Brook Park and St. Cloud, and then transferred all that right of way back to the homeowners. Because I said, you know, at some point in time, we're going to wish we had that back again. So let's go ahead, keep the study open, keep looking at it, make plans to do the kinds of things that the future is going to require us to do. We all have kids, we're going to have grandkids, and they're going to be great grandkids. We have to think about the future too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Tony, you'll be the next one to answer the question. You want me to read?
No, I
Got it?
position on NLX,
All right.
and pretty
All
straightforward.
right, thanks.
So, you know, I think Tom's right. We're going to have to get around to moving people in modes other than automobiles sooner or later. And I think that we need to be open to that conversation. You know, true story. I'm going to go back to when my youngest was 5 years old. So this must have been 17 years ago or something. And we were driving down Highway 23. And, you know, Colton, he says, "Hey, Dad, how come people don't ride on those trains?" You know, the trains go up and down Highway 23. You know, we'd go up and down them on the way to school. And, you know, I turned around and thought, boy, this kid's a little ahead of his time, you know. And my response was, well, you know, someday we're probably gonna again. You know, it wasn't that long ago that we ran rail between Minneapolis and Duluth, the Twin Cities and Duluth. And, you know, I always say we need to let the numbers drive the conversation and make sure that it's a sustainable and a good investment. And, you know, we are really highly ranked with this project in terms of the federal priorities for the feds assisting in high-speed rail investments. And I think that we should be open to that conversation and make sure that we have, you know, the right framework to have the stops along the way that make sense for us as well, and the right balance between speed and enough stops to move people efficiently. And, you know, there's an ongoing conversation. I think one of the issues that we're going to have to work through that's been coming up a great deal more lately is sort of the rail crossings. I think next week there's a host of town hall forums up and down the line to talk about how we would address some of the crossings. That's a very real issue that many of our communities struggle with the current train traffic, and it could be exacerbated if we go there. So, I mean, I'm very open to the conversation. I actually really look forward to the days when we can recreate that link between Duluth and the Twin Cities and have a couple of stops along the way for us to jump on, be able to, you know, I mean, for me, it'd be wonderful if I'm so lucky to continue to serve and jump on the train and, you know, read the paper on the internet on the way down and, you know, pay attention to something other than the road and start moving in the direction of the future.
Thank you. Jason, you're next.
All right, as far as the NLX line, I know the original proposal with the high speed, the largest concern that I heard with that was all of the rural crossings that were going to be closed. And that would have really been detrimental for our areas in northern Pine County. How many farmers would have been going how far around to get to fields, and emergency vehicles unable to get to where they needed to go. So I know the plans have been scaled back to save some money, but yet then part of that is reducing the speed, and by reducing the speed, you're making that less attractive. You're not gaining what we originally thought we were going to gain with the process. So right now, NLX is something I am not in favor of. I am definitely in favor of looking at mass transit and other forms of transit. I am not convinced that rail is that answer. I've been to a couple of different seminars. Technology is going down a road taking us towards driverless, single passenger vehicles that are a quarter of the size of what we use today, that will offer all these same things. You can be on your computer, you can do your work, because the vehicle is through the GPS and all is going to drive itself. And that is going to take roads. So I believe we should be investing in roads and bridges right now. That is the way of the future. It's very great to be nostalgic. We love trains, that's great. But that's the past. We need to look at where technology is taking us, where it's going to go in the future. And we do not have the population density of the East Coast or Europe to try to compare and say that trains are working there, they'll work here. I do not believe they will. So I think we need to look at the technology that's coming and see where that can go and be willing to make those investments there. That's flexible too. Trains are on a fixed rail and they can't go to where individuals need to go. Buses, right now we should be focusing on buses. We see the Arrowhead Transit here in our area. It is a wonderful service for people. And that's where I should believe we should be focusing our transit dollars.
Thank you, Jason. Michael?
Had an opportunity, this is a great question, love this one. Had an opportunity to sit in on a meeting, and right now our government subsidies, let's just use the North Star Rail, the North Star line between Big Lake and downtown, okay? Right now, every time somebody gets on that train, the subsidy for that person is $22 to ride that train. Not to mention the subsidy to, not to mention what it costs for them to, out of their pocket. So it's $22 to go down to Minneapolis from Big Lake. When at the end of the day, when they get back on that train, the government subsidy for that person, $22. So our government subsidy for that train is $44 per day per person. Now I had an opportunity, I'm in the cities all the time, okay? And when I get to appointments early, I always pull over off to the side, do some reading, stuff like that. So one of my favorite spots to pull in, because there's never a car in the parking lot, is the Anoka train depot. 2:30 in the afternoon, there's 6 cars in the parking lot. And there's parking spaces for about 200. The trains aren't working, guys. Now there are some, now the Hiawatha line, if you watch that line, I've never seen it, because I'm down in South Minneapolis all the time, I always get stuck at that train, at the train crossing, never seen a train, unless there's a Vikings game or a Twins game, go Vikings. But, fuller than probably a third. Okay, these trains, I can't, it doesn't work, because we do not have our businesses, our places of, where we work, right alongside of those rails. Now, down in the Twin Cities, Metro Transit buses work because they go down every single street, both directions, all the time. That's why that works. Okay, the bus between Duluth and Minneapolis stops at McDonald's. Okay, stops there on the way down in the morning, on the way back in the afternoon. I've never seen a full bus. Never seen a full bus. So how in the world are we going to fill up a train if we can't even fill up a Jefferson line going between Duluth and Minneapolis? It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. Like I said, I can't hook up my skid steer to the back of a train to get it down to the cities for a project. Trains would not work for me, and I don't think they work for central Minnesota.
Thank you, Michael. Tony, this will be you'll start with this question here. How much potential economic development is there from potential mining in northeast Minnesota? I'll say it one more time. How much potential economic development is there from potential mining in northeast Minnesota? Tony?
Well, the northeastern Minnesota, particularly in regions quite a bit north of here, up on the Iron Range, has a long history and tradition of mining, and they've been working very, very hard as of late to try to diversify. There are some existing mine expansions and openings that have been proposed for a very long time. Some of them have met with quite a long process for attempting to be permitted to operate, and once they get operating with the current technologies, the number of jobs is actually fairly small. I mean, it's big for that area, but I mean, the Polymet mine has about 200 jobs for 20 years in the mine itself. There's certainly expansion jobs for building the project and things like that, but we've been really working hard to try to help diversify the economy on the Iron Range. We've had some of the healthcare sector phone lines located up in Hibbing, and we just this year funded some economic development projects to bring a new siding plant up onto the Iron Range and try to pursue some additional diversification of the Iron Range economy, because I think that the mining jobs, while they are a real part of what the Iron Range is, and they're a part that will be around for a very long time, with the new advent of all of the technologies that are used in the mines, they're not the economic driver for jobs for the people that they have been in the past either. And so we really do need to be cognizant of that and look carefully at making sure that we're using that 21st Century Mineral Fund that is the taconite tax that they generate on site, and helping them be creative and work toward diversification.
Thank you. Jason, would you like me to reread the question? Okay.
The mining is very important to northern Minnesota. When I speak with Representative Van Zelts and Metza, they are adamant that we need to get mining going up there. Senator Lourey is right. The number of jobs, it's not going to be the economic driver that it was in years past. That being said, it is still going to be an important part of their economy. We have to realize that mining is needed for everybody that has a computer or a smartphone or some other device that uses precious metals. We need to get them from somewhere. And I believe we should be mining them in an area where we are watching the environmental impacts, rather than buying them from overseas where they're not paying as much attention to the environmental impacts. And so we have the precious metal mines, we have the taconite mines in that area. And although it's not what it used to be, it is still going to be vital for the people in those areas. And actually, when you look at the news, there's potential copper mining being looked at right here around Pine City. And these are things that are going to, the property taxes that would come along with that would also be an economic boost for these areas. So we cannot just say no. We have to look at how to do it, but how to do it right.
Thank you, Jason. Michael, you're next.
Want to read it again?
Yes. How much potential economic development is there from potential mining in northeast Minnesota?
Well, I think it's an interesting question, and I find it interesting because the Iron Range has been for many, many years strong DFL. I mean, it's just what it is. But I find it interesting that the newspapers up there and the Duluth Tribune, the Sabi Press are starting to endorse the Republicans. And I think that that's a real interesting position, because at the state central meeting this summer, the DFL, they tried to put into their platform an anti-mining plank, which I think is unbelievable when Minnesota's 8th district is so strong in mining. Now, I also heard that they were trying to put in an anti-timber plank in their platform, and again, the 8th district, mining, timber, that's what we do. The other thing that we do is farming. What's the next thing? Go up onto the Iron Range and tell a town that they're going to be shutting down a mine. They go into full panic. Okay, if a mine shuts down, that means all the jobs, all the grocery stores, the gas stations. People stop spending money up there. What happens? Main Street goes dead. Okay, so mining has a strong place in economics in the 8th District and in northern Minnesota.
Thank you, Michael. Tom Jones?
Well, I remember back in 6th grade, and you take Minnesota history in 6th grade, and there was a line in there, or a story in there about how Minnesota mines had produced 2/3 of the world's iron between 1900 and, okay, I won't tell you what year I was in 6th grade. Okay. But, and so I do believe that mining is important, and I do believe that mining will continue on the Iron Range. And I do believe that it is a major economic driver up there. It has a lot of multiplier effects of the jobs and the, that are produced by mining. But I think this is one of those deals where the fight is going to be about regulation and oversight, and this is where, you know, I'll tell you, the Republicans always say the person doing the work knows how to do it best. Well, I'm afraid that in this case, and as in a lot of other cases, the oversight is the part that makes it viable. If you're going to, so we're going to do the mining, but it's going to have a significant amount of oversight, because there's a lot of value up there, real estate value, a lot of vacation properties, a lot of people who retire up there, the water, the boundary waters, and all that stuff is important as well. And you know, when it comes right down to it, this is another instance where the internet would allow people to work up there. I know people in this county that if they're lucky enough to live close enough to town so that they can telecommute, they will. And what kind of an opportunity would that be, to be sitting on the shores of Bass Lake and connecting with your office down in Pine City? So, you know, the economic development can't be, the question can't be, can we do mines for the economic development? The question has to be, how are we going to do economic development, and how do mines fit in? Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. This next question, Jason, you'll be the first one to answer this question. What do you think are the top 3 problems you see currently in the state? How would you address these issues, not including the Internet of Communications? So except for the Internet and Communications, what do you think are the top 3 problems you see currently in the state, and how would you address these issues?
Okay, first would be transportation. I think we all are in agreement that we have infrastructure issues. We made investments years ago to put a freeway system and good roads and bridges in place. And we have not been prioritizing that at the same level as we have in the past. But we also have to remember that back then we did not have an HHS budget and an education budget that took up the same percentage that they do today. So we are a little bit strapped when we look at, you know, because if we're going to say how do we prioritize, I think most people would say education and HHS are top priorities. So we have to look at this transportation issue and say, how can we come up with some new ideas and ways to do this? And I believe there were very good plans in place. There were some good ones that came from the Republican side, rededicating taxes from auto parts and tires and things like that. And then we should be looking at, you know, the Democrats were considering gas tax increases. I did not agree with the way they were doing it. I would be willing to talk about at the pump, not on the supplier. But those are things that we need to look at and commit to. And I guess mental health would probably be number 2. We are really, really struggling with that issue right now. I know our police departments struggle with, you know, getting people and handling people. Our schools are struggling with it. You know, you have one individual in a classroom who takes one para away This is really busting our budgets in a lot of areas. So, this is something we have to be able to look at as well, to say, how can we work together and come up with some new solutions? We have to be willing to look outside of the way we've done things in the past, which can be very difficult. Change can be hard, and we have institutions in place that can be set in their ways, and we have to be willing to present change to them in a way that can be acceptable, and then they will probably be willing to work. And I guess I'm kind of running out of time for a number 3.
It is a long question. Thanks, Jason. Michael, your question, would you like me to repeat it?
3 issues.
3 issues with the state of Minnesota.
3 issues. I'm going to say the 3 that affect me. Okay, because I think they affect everyone. Health insurance. We are getting clobbered in our health insurance. How many? I mean, just think to yourself. I mean, a couple of years ago, we started signing up for MNsure, and we started doing that, and we looked at it, and we thought, oh, the pricing's pretty good, but the deductible was $13,500. Well, who in here's got $13,500 sitting in the bank? Okay, now my deductible for my insurance was $10,000. That $10,000, I went through it in 3.5 seconds. Now that's only 1.5 because these are only 30-second pieces. Okay, it costed me $21,000 to get my fingers fixed. Okay, I went through a $10,000 deductible in 3.5 seconds. It took me 3-4 years to build that up to a $10,000 savings account, so that way I would have it when I needed it. My deductible this year, fortunately, is like $7,000 or whatever. Well, I had a 2-millimeter kidney stone. Costed me $31,000 because they couldn't get it out of me for 5 days. I got to spend over at First Light Country Club over there, and they finally had to do surgery to get it out. Well, that's $16,000 in deductibles in 2 years that I had to spend. That's, to me, the #1 problem that we have in Minnesota. I'm big into veterans issues. Okay, we lose 22 veterans a day to suicide in this country. Mental health. We need to help veterans understand that there are benefits out there. We are so fortunate in this county to have Ben Weiner as our veteran service officer. That guy works harder than anybody, and he works with my son all the time when he needs something. He came back from Afghanistan, did a tour with SEAL Team 4. It was pretty tough. When he came back, he was pretty angry. So we need to help our veterans. We cannot ignore them. The last biggest problem that we have in this state is our spending. We keep thinking that throwing money at a problem is what's going to fix this problem. Okay, now I learned a lot this week, and I want to thank you for teaching me. I learned a lot about education. My wife is a para at the elementary school. Now she, and I'm just going to throw out a round number. It ain't, it's not exact. But she makes about $20,000 a year. But I found out that her student only gets to school about $6,000. And when we have 112 of these students at about $14,000 apiece, we are negatively impacting our schools. 112 times 4, that's almost $2 million. And if every school district has that, we need to figure out how to help our school districts on that type of stuff. I gotta stop.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. We do a little bit. Next, Tom Jones, your question. Would you like me to repeat it?
No, I think I got it, thanks. Well, I think as I've driven around and talked to people, I think the #1 issue that we are really not even taking a look at is our aging population and what kind of services and conditions and assistance they're going to need, because baby boomers are a pretty big cohort, and my dad's 97. He's and he's still kicking. So people, we're living longer and we're needing more services. And I know that in Mora they have a couple of hundred senior living elder apartments plus assisted living plus memory care plus all that, and there's a 200 or 300 person waiting list. And that 200 or 300 person, and maybe they got funded for 24, they got a grant for 24 more units. So by the time those get built, that waiting list is going to be 300. And it's time to start thinking about a lot of different options, because we know the number one cheapest way to deal with the aged is to keep them at home, give them the services they need there, whether it's the Arrowhead or the Heartland bus system, or you know, whatever it is. We need to look at multiple ways to keep them at home as long as we can, and then provide them the services that they have that they need when they move beyond that stage. Secondly, I think education in rural Minnesota is a thing that we've been fooling around with this since the Ventura administration changed the way the formula worked, changed the way the funding worked, and every time they make a change, we get a little bit further behind. And so we need to take a good hard look at how we're doing this, and whether or not we're going to treat citizens, students in rural Minnesota the same way if they're treated in the metro. And aside from that, I think we need to find a way to get economic development moved out into the rural areas, because we're a major commuter district. Half of us leave. I spent many years leaving this district to go to work, and I come home with a paycheck less my gas money and deductions. And so every time anything needs to get done here, we have to make sure it has to come out of our residential tax base. So getting LGA, county program aid, and township aid back into the kind of condition they were in the early 90s would be really important.
Thank you, Tom. Tony, you're next.
So some of the biggest issues facing the state, I think Jason's right on the transportation issue. I mean, that's one that has that continually takes us a long time. The last time we raised the gas tax was 2008, and that was 20 years since a new investment in our transportation system, and that investment is really running short, and we need to have the wherewithal to understand that we need a stable additional funding resource to support our transportation and other infrastructure issues as well. You know, we inherited a transportation system from our predecessors in office that was 95% complete and paid for. They didn't pass on the debt to us, and we built the strongest economy really the world's ever seen off of their investments. And we haven't even had the decency to maintain that infrastructure, let alone make the investments for our kids and our grandkids to move forward. And so I think that one's really of a critical nature. We have $600 million per year backlog in just the maintenance of our existing system. That's $6 billion over 10 years. And it is going to require some hard work and some new funding in order to accomplish it. And I look forward to trying to take that one. You know, I think that, you know, speaking for the whole state, not necessarily for this region, we might not see it quite as much, though these issues are very real here. But the state of Minnesota has become, over the last, you know, couple of decades, much more diverse than we've ever been, and we have not handled that diversity very well. We have some of the worst disparities in our healthcare system, in our education system, in our economy, in the entire country, and it's not who we are as a people. But we need to understand that better and get beyond it. And it's not just a moral question. You know, I mean, I think that as a moral society, we should be able to figure out how to embrace diversity. But beyond that, it's also an economic imperative. The state economists and the demographers have been telling us for a very long time, you know, the societies that are poised to succeed into the future are those that are able to understand and work with a diverse population. Those are the ones that are going to attract the youth. Those are the ones that are going to be the successes in the future. We really need to take a deep look at who we are as a people. And then also, you know, one that is going to take a lot of work is the individual market and for health insurance. Mike mentioned quite a few health cost drivers actually as well. I mean, that's one of the big things behind the market, is that it's actually paying for a really expensive health care system, that we need to change how care delivery is done and take some of the waste out of the health care system, and that's one of the best ways to approach that. But it is a real problem for that market segment, and one that I plan to work on a great deal if I'm lucky enough to be reelected.
Thank you, Tony. I'll give you gentlemen just a minute to get ready. Michael, we'll give you 3 minutes to do just a follow-up. Anything you want to share is just, and I'll just remind the audience to thank you all for coming. We do have to get these guys done for a break for the Pine City School Board. So with that said, Michael, you got 3 minutes to kind of share what you would like.
It's been a fun year for me, I'll be honest with you. I've done, as a contractor, I've done 120 invoiceable projects this summer, working with my son, driving all over the state, commercial projects, home projects, and stuff like that. We know that there's work out there. You just have to hustle and find it. And it's, and for some people it is hard. We've gotten, one of the things that Tom mentioned, about our elderly. My mom just lost her battle with Alzheimer's last week, okay? And everybody says, are you okay, are you okay? My mom died 5 years ago. Her body just caught up, her body caught up with the disease. And it was hard on my dad. And it was hard on my sister, and it was hard on me. The only time I could go down and spend time with her because of how busy I was at 10 o'clock at night, and I stayed till 3:30 in the morning, went home, got 3 hours of sleep so I could get up and had to, and we gotta have an opportunity to be able to spend time with our loved ones and help each other out. I've always said, something, we don't need politicians. In Washington and in St. Paul, we need patriots, people that know what their job is, and when they go down there, they do it for the betterment of their district. Tony and I don't agree on a lot of things, but something, we do love Pine County, we do love Carleton County, we do love Caneva County. I moved up here from Brooklyn Park 16 years ago, and I can't even imagine going back. My deer stand is 500 paces from my back door. I can go goose hunting, about 120 paces from my back door. I throw clay pigeons at night, in the evening in the summertime. We love being in East Central Minnesota, and you guys do too. Otherwise, you wouldn't live here. The only thing I wish is I had a lake on my property. But something, we have enough lakes that we can drive to, and that's in. And I just think that, there's so many great opportunities. We just have to figure out what they are, how to best tackle those problems and those opportunities, and bring them back to the district. Whoever wins these elections, we all have phones, we all have email. Let us know what your thoughts are, so that way we can really make a difference down in St. Paul. We're not isolated, because something, we're going down there because we care about you. Okay? So give us that opportunity to do a good job for you.
Thank you, Michael. Tom Jones, you got a 3-minute follow-up?
Well, I think what we need to try to do is we need to try to break through the partisanship that keeps us from finding solutions to the issues that come up at every door I visit. For 23 years locally and 38 years as a career being a carpenter and a building contractor, you meet all kinds of people. You got homeowners and subcontractors and inspectors and you talk about everything there is to talk about, and you know right away whether or not they're going to agree with you on an issue. You can't talk about Formica all day long. Eventually you get on to something else. And I think what we really need to do here is try to find a way to create a place where people can talk to each other and look for common ground, look for a place of agreement. we can always find out what our differences are. And we can always, pretend that if everybody did things my way, whether everything would be fine. The taxes would be just right, too hot, too cold, just right. And so let's find a place where, I read something the other day that said that only 1 in 5 people is comfortable talking about politics with someone that they don't already know agrees with them. So we need to, eventually we can't keep going back and forth from one extreme to the other. Let's find a place where we can find solutions and move on to the next big problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Tony, your follow-up?
Well, thank you once again to Pine Tech and to Window and to the Pine City Area Chamber of Commerce for hosting this debate, and thank you once again for the audience participation. Really a good set of questions that came forward. I always enjoy this. It was 10 years ago that I first came here and sat for the first of these debates, and I've been incredibly honored and humbled to be the senator for this region for these last 10 years. And very proud of a lot of the work that I've done. And it goes back to a lot of what Mike said. We all have deep roots in the community here, and we're very community-oriented people. And I think all of us here have been very good about staying away from the bitter, poison partisanship that has, created gridlock on the national scene, and that is starting to creep into Minnesota in a way that is just not helpful for our dialogue. And I think that, again, I've been very proud of the work that I've been able to accomplish. Like I said, the deep roots, I grew up here. I actually left, right away, leaving high school, and thought I knew better. And, I actually flew out to LA and thought, I ain't never coming back to this podunk town. But they chewed me up and spit me out in about 6 months' time. There was a 7.1 earthquake, and I'm just like, no, that's not for me. So I went to Minneapolis and did most of my studies at the University of Minnesota. Minneapolis got way too big for me, and I said, maybe Duluth. I finished up my studies at UMD. That's where I met my wife, and we started talking about getting married and starting a family. And after a few years out and about, I said, where I'd go to raise a family is I'd buy the farm right around the corner from the farm where I grew up, the farm that my very best friend lived on. I went and knocked on my friend Bob's door and said, hey Bob, you got any interest in selling your farm? And we worked out a deal, and we've carved out a really good life. We've been there 25 years. The kids we're now empty nesters. My wife went back and got an advanced degree, is now teaching in the high schools, and we're sticking around. We're going to be here, and we're going to be listening to our community and trying to make this state and this country a better place to live, work, and raise a family. And it takes all of us to join that conversation. And whoever you vote for here, still stay in touch with whoever we send down to St. Paul, and understand that we're down there for a reason, and it's to make lives better for people.
Thank you, Tony. Jason?
I'd also like to thank everyone. I think we kind of touched on it, the national race gets all the attention and for all the wrong reasons. The one thing I learned 2 years ago, running for the first time, going to the different local events and the parades, especially meeting all the other local candidates, including Sheriff Nelson, our county attorney people, and now with Tom and Tony and Mike, we have great people here running for the right reasons. And I wish we would have people standing around because there were not enough seats. I wish we could get more people coming to these things to meet the people running, because that's how we will do our job right, knowing that people are engaged and they're coming to us with their issues. But Tony and I remember my first year down, there's a urban way of thinking, there's a suburban way of thinking and then there's a rural way of thinking. And that doesn't go along party lines, I don't believe. And I couldn't tell you how many mornings at about 7 o'clock, Tony was pulling into the parking lot for the Senators, and there was maybe 3 or 4 other vehicles there, and I was walking in from my apartment across that parking lot, and we would see each other. That's 2 rural guys who were up early, getting there, getting started. And that's why I believe any one of the 4 of us here would be that same person. So I think we've got great choices here, and I think, I hope we all continue to get along, and I look forward to working with everybody. So just try to convince people you know to get to more of these things and come meet us.
Thank you, Jason. And with a follow-up on that, I want to thank you all for your professionalism. You guys worked together. I thought it was very nice. Ladies and gentlemen, we had a lot of really great questions. We really did, and we just don't have time to continue. And I know the candidates would love to spend some more time. But at this time, we're just going to call it a break. We're going to start with the Penn City School Board at 7:30. Those who like to stay can stay. Otherwise, thank you for attending.